Kevin Burgess is a forged fired champion bladesmith who is extremely passionate about his craft. In this industry lingo heavy episode, we will go into how he got started forging, how he learned his craft, what it's like being on Forged in Fire, and so much more. If you love to hear someone talk about what they love to do, you will love this episode. Hopefully you will stick around as we nerd out over knife making with Kevin Burgess. Okay, I'm here with Kevin Burgess. He's a bladesmith. Do you prefer that or blacksmith?
Yeah, I am. I'll make the distinction very clear right now. I am very much so not a blacksmith. I am a monkey with a hammer, and I make knives. I'm a bladesmith. Blacksmiths are a whole different breed.
But he's been on History Channel's Forged in Fire. He teaches classes and stuff. I'll let him introduce himself.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm a about 5-year bladesmith in the works. I'm heading for my journeyman here, my journeyman rating with the ABS here in about a year or so, and been doing this full time since about December of 2022, and just been enjoying every second of it. It's better than a 9-to-5 desk job, that's for sure.
Yeah. So, how did you originally get started? Like, were you just always interested in crafts, or?
I wasn't always interested. I always had grandeur of becoming a computer scientist whenever I was a little kid. I wanted to do code on computer and all that stuff. I wanted to, because parents had told me that's how, that's a job. You write the check and you decide where you want to go. But I had a epiphany whenever I was actually about 15 in high school. And I realized that 9 to 5 for the rest of my life, I could not do it. I figured out right then and there in the middle of high school that working situation was not going to be for me. And so instead of 9 to 5, I decided to, own my own business and do this 24/7. But I'd rather do that than, have my soul sucked away by 35 kind of thing. I originally got into this because I'm a giant nerd, and that's a recurring theme that you're going to hear from me today, is that everything about me is a dichotomy of interests. On one hand, I'm super into anime and all that stuff. On the other hand, I probably do, save for like military stuff, I would like to think that this is probably the most masculine job out there. Beating on steel, making knives and all that stuff. It is just two different ends of the spectrum, and they come together. And that's actually how I got started. So there was this YouTube channel called Me, and they made all these insane swords and knives and stuff from all different kinds of like TVs, video games, animes, all that stuff. And little 15-year-old me just, oh man, that's cool as hell. I just enjoyed it, and very soon figured out that swords are a pain to make, to put it lightly. And so I decided that I was going to, learn the, more traditional stuff, learn, historical bladesmithing, and, more functional knives and than these huge swords that are, as big as you are, kind of thing.
Yeah. So what did you start out with? Because there's always a story behind that.
Yeah, so I started out, I remember it very clearly. It was the King of Random. Rest in peace, my brother. But the King of Random was originally where I got kind of most of the ideas for all my stuff, because it was starting out just like melting down cans and stuff and just kind of having fun with molten aluminum, because that's safe that's super safe. But it got from there, and then I built he had a little flower pot forge or whatever, and It was this little bucket lined with plaster of Paris and sand, and you put charcoal down the center of it, you threw a
that's
vacuum.
the exact video that I started out with when I was doing
and I made one of those, and I started beating on rebar, and it's like, wow, this is really cool. And so I decided that that's what I was going to do for the rest of my life.
So did it just progress from there, you learning on your own, or did you get...
So for a few years, I think I watched every single blacksmith video, bladesmith video, knife making video on YouTube. If it was out there, it doesn't matter how bad the camera quality was, it doesn't matter how pixelated it was, I watched it. And that's how I initially got started. But the main thing that actually like kind of elevated my craft up into the second, into the higher echelons was the American Bladesmith Society, and they're the kind of the premier knife making guild society for most of America, and actually spanning into international. I actually just the other month came back from a Blade show in Atlanta, Georgia, and I got to spend a lot of time with a lot of guys, and even got to meet a now mastersmith from South Africa, which is really cool, kind of talking to him. But the ABS is really where I learned a lot of my more finer techniques and learned to refine everything. From there, it's just everything is learning from the community, because this is, if you've ever watched Forge and Fire, the thing that they always put on repeat is, oh man, the community is so great, and everything, everybody's so forthcoming. And you ask anybody a question, and if they know it, they'll generally give it to you. And if for some reason you manage to find the 1 out of 1,000 that doesn't give you an answer, guarantee you somebody else will.
Yeah. So you mentioned the ABS. Is there like a local chapter you got involved with, or how did you learn from that?
So the ABS is is nationwide, but there isn't really chapters so much as the ABS. It does offer what are called hammer-ins, which is basically kind of a bi-yearly get together in different areas of the world for like the big official ones. And you just basically get to spend a weekend with a bunch of mastersmiths that have been doing this for as long as I've been alive. So you tend to gain a few things when you're looking at old curmudgeon dudes and their knives and stuff. They tend to know a few things, and so you gain things from them. But as far as there actually being like guilds and stuff, no, you have to go state level. Like that'd be your Texas Knife Makers Guild and all that stuff.
Yeah. So, you're doing all this. When's the point that you decide you've gotten good enough to try out for Forge and Fire? Like, was there, like, one thing where you're like, okay, now I can do it, or was it just going for it?
I would say that for the Forge and Fire, feeling confident was as soon as I got power equipment. So it was one of those things where you can't go on there without having, I should say, let me rephrase that. You can go on there with like a little 4x36 grinder and just a little, railroad spike anvil and all that, or railroad track anvil and all that stuff. It's not terribly advisable though, because, if you make it to the final round, they don't pull any punches. First time around I had to make, the sword itself was fairly standard. It just flared out at the end, and that was the only real kind of weird thing about it. Mm-hmm. On the blade side, the handle I just had to kind of carve out of a big block of wood, so it was fairly standard. But just the size of it, the thing was 27 inches overall, and so it certainly wasn't a small blade or anything. So it's one of those things where had I not had power tools or anything like that, that would have been very difficult to knock out in 4 days.
Yeah. So just because I'm curious, and it's a lot of people's favorite shows to watch. Even my grandma loves to watch it.
Yeah.
Like what is the trying out process? What's it like getting onto that show? Like,
so
how
I'm
do you
gonna
go?
I'll go a little bit further back even for you. So I'm friends with a bunch of online blacksmith bladesmiths that are about my age, give or take a few years. And a close friend of mine, he actually came down to my shop, for a couple of weeks, and we just made stuff out here for a couple of weeks over the summer one time. And he calls me up at middle of the night one day, and it's like, "Hey man, have you signed up for Forge and Fire?" And it's like, "This is the last day for casting for season 7." And he's like, "No." So yeah, here, and this dude sends me a link and everything, and so he sends me a link to the History Channel page and everything, and I sign up, and I get a call back in like about a week, and it's like, "Hey, we'd like to continue the application process with you." And then went through a few Skype interviews, and actually got to show off some just really cool stuff. They kind of ask you to show that you're worthy of getting onto the show. And so my worthiness project to show that, and this was for me personally as well as just to kind of like, yeah, this will get me on there, was I recently had a customer give me a big thing of leaf spring for 2 knives, and he gave me like, it was 1/2 inch thick leaf spring. This was off a big truck, and he didn't quite realize how much spare he gave me. And he's just like, yeah, no, you can just keep all this spare stuff. And so I was like, okay. And so I forged out an entire 32-inch sword in about a night. And I came in onto the back into the house at like 5 a.m. covered in grinder dust, just with this sword on my back, and it was just the coolest feeling ever. And it's like, yeah, I think that was the moment that I knew, yeah, if I go on, I think I can do this, and possibly win, which I ended up doing at least the first time around.
Yeah. So what? Because like it is reality TV.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, is this, like, an actual just, like, full-on competition, or do they, like, add in some drama there? Or are you allowed to say?
I can't say any of the behind-the-scenes stuff, but I can say that, I feel like I can say anyways, that is actually, as far as drama shows go, it's actually fairly real to life. What you see is kind of what you get. The judges are out there for an honest-to-God 5 hours watching you make knives, through all the interesting parts when you're hammering on steel and all the boring parts whenever you're just sitting in front of a grinder just going back and forth and just kind of, going at it. Mm-hmm. So it's an honest-to-God, show. They do kind of fish for comments on occasion. I'm not, I won't insinuate too much, but they do kind of fish for comments. If they want you to,
we need you to say more, kind of thing.
Yeah. It's like for the second time I was on, it was the Young Guns Championship. So it was a bunch of us young champions who got on there, and I was the old man of the group at a ripe old age of 22, and so. They wanted to have it be kind of like, oh man, you're back at the schoolyard, because we had to make a knife out of a trampoline, and the handle scales were skateboards, and so yeah, it was real fun. But they were like, I remember them kind of like fishing for comments. It's like, yeah, I feel like I'm back on the playground again with all my friends, and so they didn't end up using that footage, but
you know how us kids talk.
Yeah, it's hello fellow kids, kind of thing. And I think that's why they ended up cutting it, because we're knife makers, we're not actors, so
yeah.
I don't know how good that was, but. As far as everything on the show goes, it's fairly real life. Some of the timelines are weird, but that's just for
visual purpose.
You have to reset a stage. It's that's not going to be instantaneous. So what do you expect?
Yeah. So like, how nerve-wracking? Because like you see all the time the weapons failing or whatever. How nerve-wracking is that when you're standing there having to watch?
So first time around, not a bit. I was completely in the moment.
That's another thing I forgot. How old were you first time around?
I was 20.
Okay.
I was 20 whenever I first went on there. But yeah, no. So whenever I first went on there, first round, I was on complete autopilot. I remember a lot if I really think about it, but I have to really think about it to actually remember anything that went on, because I was on just, okay, I know the steps, I know how to do all this, go. And whenever I had actually, so we were doing a nautical theme, so we had to make a knife, and it was going to chop into a boat cleat. And in the process, I had actually forgotten that we were going to be chopping into a boat cleat, and so I made my knife actually really thin to one of my more sellable knives, because most people whenever they go on there, you get to look at they have that wall of knives behind you and stuff, and I got to look at all of them, and some of them had some beefy edges, but I put on like one of my standard chopper that you're going into the woods and chopping wood, not metal with. But I did a good enough job in my heat treat that actually didn't have really anything happen to it. It took 10 chops like just like a champ, and then the next guy, his blade got stuck into the cleat, and they had a little bit of the sword and stone thing with that one. It was, ooh boy, that was fun.
Yeah. So I was thinking about this because you talked about you're trying to get your journeyman, right?
Yes.
Through the ABS. So what does that entail for people who don't know?
So with the ABS, there are the ranking systems. So there's apprentice, and that's just kind of you're paying your yearly dues, and you're there kind of thing. Journeyman is the next step up, and then after that there's master. So with journeyman, you have to do two things. You have to pass the performance test and then the fit and finish test. With the performance test, you have to make a knife between 8 and 10 inches, and you're going to go over to a master smith shop, and then you're going to go over there and test it. So it's chopping through 1-inch thick free-hanging hemp or linen rope in one slice. And so you have to do that in one slice, and then you're going to go through a 2x4. And what I was told whenever I took an intro to bladesmithing with Master Smith Scott McGee, he told me that if you ever dare bring a green board to one of these Master Smith shop, usually all of them have a nice board that's been up in the attic, drying for like 10 plus years, so it's about hard as a rock. And they'll let you do it for the first one, but then they'll bring down that board for your second shop, and it's like, okay, now go for that, go through that and aim for that knot right there, you know. And so you're going through 2x4 2 times with that knife, and then you're shaving hair. There's no edge redressing at all during this point in time. And both of those are fairly easy, you know. Then comes the actual hard part is you have to stick a knife in a vise. So this, like the one that's right beside me, you have to stick a knife in the vise like that and bend it 90 degrees, and you cannot break in half or anything like that. You are allowed to have a little crack on the edge, but it can't go more than like a third of the way up the blade. And if you can manage to do that, you've passed the performance test, and then after that you have to go to a blade show. And then you get your knife. You submit your knives to a panel of, I think it's like 7 master smiths that look through your knives and everything, and they determine whether or not they are nearly perfect. And so let me tell you. And so let me go on a tangent and tell you a story about how perfect needs to be. And so you have to keep in mind that I'm talking about near geriatric 60 to 70-year-olds for some of these guys with Coke bottle glasses about half an inch thick, and they're telling these 20, 30-something-year-old dudes, okay, and they're doing this quick as can be, like because they have to do this within a few seconds. Because, like, for example, at this year's Blade Show, I think there was like a class of 40, and that's 40 people submitting 5 knives each. You do the math on that. They have to be, and they want to get it done in about an hour. So they're blowing through knives, you know. And so there's this old master smith just picks up this knife, looks at it for a few seconds, puts it back down. Okay, so your cross is out of square by 0.02 of an inch. Your plunge lines are off by about maybe 0.05 of an inch. And this knife wouldn't fail you, but it wouldn't hurt. It wouldn't help you in passing, kind of thing. And you know how Mama always tells you whenever you bring something to her that, oh, sweetie, it's perfect. You know. He let me pick up this knife and kind of look at it. I couldn't tell what these old dudes were looking at, you know. And for any of you guys out there that have dealt with kind of machining and tolerance and stuff, you know how small a thousandth of an inch. I think a human hair is like 10,000ths of an inch or something like that. I don't know what it is, but it's not a whole. Human hair is not a whole lot, and these guys were seeing in those kind of tolerances, and So you have that to contend with. So it's submitting 5 knives of that quality, and then passing, and then that's your journeyman. And then to brevity for the mastersmith, it's all of that, but in really high layer Damascus and patterns and all that stuff. And so it's that plus some. Yeah.
So you teach classes here at the shop. Were you doing that before you went on Forged in Fire? Or?
I was doing it post-portion. Let me see. I think I might have had like maybe 1 or 2 pre-Forged in Fire, but most of them were after it. It was because it was one of those things where it's like, okay, yep, definitely don't want to teach before I feel like I'm ready, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And and kind of teach people the wrong stuff. I want to think that I'm teaching people the right things and what they're doing. I'd hope I'm fairly proficient after 5 years.
Yeah. So like, how hard was that for you? Are you just kind of like a natural teacher, or was that like a learning process for you on how to teach that?
I'm typically it's changed over the years. Back in the day, I was very much so the quiet kid in the corner. I didn't really ever say much of anything. I was always kind of very just shut in to myself. But through teaching classes, through being on TV, through just kind of trying to just naturally growing up as a person, I've kind of come out and now I'm a bit more kind of open with people and easy to talk with, I think.
Yeah. So like, did it come pretty natural?
Yeah. I'd say so. It's it was weird for like 2 classes, and to this day it's still a little wigs me out whenever I, 23, am teaching somebody who's like, I don't know, 67 plus. It's still kind of weird, but you get past that within the first 5 minutes of beating people.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you something.
About the classes, about the knives.
Yeah. Okay. So with the classes and everything, you're teaching knives. You're doing this constantly. Do you ever struggle with like staying inspired to make something?
No.
No.
Not a chance, dude. There's so many I could spend my entire life making one type of knife. You give me one type of knife, and I can make that for the rest of my life, and I will never not be inspired. There's so many different variations, so many different techniques and things you can do. That even just a singular technique, like for example, I put hamones on a lot of my chef's knives, and so hamone is that differential tempered line that you see on a lot of Japanese blades and stuff.
Yeah.
I could spend my entire life just doing hamones and never, feel like I've done everything I can do with hamones.
Yeah. So how do you get inspired when you're creating? Is it just walking out here, or is...
It's a big part of being a nerd. So, this is kind of the recurring. This is going to be the recurring thing with me. Like I said, I'm a huge nerd. I enjoy watching, playing video games, anime, all that stuff, and so there's interest in that. But also, that's been tempered with nowadays. I have an interest in kind of like the more historical blades, like historical blades from like the 1800s. James Black is a really big maker for us. Bill Moran, he actually founded the ABS, and there's so many people that, have had such a huge impact that it's hard not to be inspired by something, whether it be nature, a person, what they've done before, or some obscenely large sword carried by some obscenely small person. There's always something that's interesting.
Yeah. What is like your like proudest piece you've ever made? Like, do you have one?
I do. It actually just sold. I made a buoy that had it had a hamon on it. It had argentium silver echelon plates or shields on the side of the handle. Handle was burl. It had brass liners, and it was a frame handle. So it was a frame handle, which has steel all the way around. I gave it brass liners as well, put some file work into that, and really just a really nice piece, I think, and that was probably to this date probably one of my proudest pieces.
Yeah. So you mentioned like being inspired by video games and history and stuff. Like, is there is it like Eastern, Western, or mostly, or?
It's both. So I am a hodgepodge of a person. So my mom's Korean, and my dad's about as white as snow. So I have connection to both sides. And so there's definitely kind of an interest from both, from either from media, being on the Japanese side for anime and stuff like that, and then more historical being Western side, kind of Bowie knives. I really like my buoys. But buoys, swords, anything like that, little hunters and stuff. But it's just kind of all over the place for that.
Yeah. So, what would be your advice for somebody who's like right now wants to look into forging, wants to get started in it? Like anything that you like learned along your way?
Realize that this will absolutely destroy your body. So whenever people say that construction people, you either become the boss or you die trying. Yeah, this is one of those things where you're just gonna die trying, because this is a extremely destructive job. I would not recommend this to too many people, if I'm being completely honest. Not because I'm scared of the competition, but because it's just a legitimately destructive thing, and also I need people that have money to buy my stuff. No, for actual real advice, YouTube is a great resource. It's one of those things where you need to at least try and know a little bit and weed through, all the mediocre people out there. But find a local guild. Find, whether or not you want to be a blacksmith, a bladesmith, a farrier, whatever you want. There is a guild near you, or one that will, teach you, that's in your general area.
Yeah. So, I guess, so, like, if somebody's looking for a guild or something, like, how would you do that? Just online? Or
state knife makers guild, state blacksmiths guild, state farriers. It's pretty self-explanatory as far as that goes. People are like I said, people are super open. I've talked to people from South America, from South Africa, from Europe, from Russia, from Wisconsin, Mississippi, Alabama, Arizona, everything.
All
everywhere.
The exotic places.
Yes, all the exotic places like Ohio, Montana. Yes, they're everywhere. Trust me, you can't shake a stick without finding somebody who knows something. I will say though, if you are looking for like the bigger names in terms of like organizations, at least for here, like in Texas, we have the Texas Knife Makers Guild. More international, for bladesmithing, you have the American Bladesmith Society. If you want to be more of a blacksmith and actually learn how to swing a hammer properly, you can join what's called ABANA, which is the Artisan Blacksmiths Association in North America. And yet again, even though ABS and ABANA are both like North America, kind of things, it's everywhere. Even if you're in the middle of the desert out in the Middle East, they'll still help you out, man. So
yeah, there's some Abana guy out there.
Yeah, there's some Abana guy out there. They'll teach you how to do things.
Yeah. So, would there anybody that like in your training or learning from these teachers that just like really inspired you? Like, if you could name like one person.
If I could name one person, that'd probably be James Rodenbaugh. He was the first master I ever talked to. Whenever I went to my first hammer in. And I remember going up to him, I think I was probably, 15, 16 at the time. And I remember showing him this little knife on my phone and being is so proud of it. And I didn't really know what he made. I just know that I knew that his name was on the roster of mastersmiths that I was teaching that day. And I knew that he probably made really nice stuff. But once I got seeing him, his style was just this really classical Americana, inspired by Tim Hancock, Yeah, Tim Hancock, I think was his name. He's passed a couple of years ago, but he was kind of one of the bigs, one of the originals here in America. And I can very easily trace my inspiration back 2 generations, and then you're at the beginning of bladesmithing here in America.
Yeah.
But definitely James Rodenbaugh would definitely be one of my bigger inspirations as far as a knife maker goes.
Yeah. So you also talked about YouTube, like who is like, because like you said, there's a lot of mediocrity on YouTube. who would be like your top guy if somebody's like looking to start out?
Yeah, the bewildering mediocrity of YouTube. As far as like I said, and this is one of those things where it depends on what you're after. So if you're after being a blacksmith, and I'll say, and so to clarify with semantics with blacksmith versus bladesmith this far into the podcast,
we've been pretty lingo heavy this podcast.
Yeah, so blacksmith is somebody who does architectural forging works. They're not dealing with knives and stuff like that. They're dealing with gates, with trivets, with chandeliers and lanterns and all that stuff. That's your people that are doing stuff that is architecturally sound. And then bladesmith is obviously the knife maker side. But if you're after a blacksmith side, Black Bear Forge on YouTube, he is a really good guy, really nice, high quality videos, really easy to watch. And I haven't gotten the chance to meet him, but I have had just like some brief kind of side interactions, if you can even call them that, just like in comments and stuff. And dude's super nice. Yeah.
So let's go to the mediocrity. Who do you avoid?
Oh boy. I'll say one last good thing. If you're a bladesmith and you're looking for kind of somebody to go to for bladesmithing, Kyle Royer, he's actually a mastersmith with the ABS, and he does some really nice high quality videos. They're entertaining. and he's obviously a mastersmith, so he knows what he's talking about. But if we're talking about the infinite pool of mediocrity that is YouTube, oh man, I don't remember his YouTube channel, but there was some guy that I remember finding on YouTube. You know what? No, I think it was like C Miller or C Miller or something like that. I really don't want to throw anybody under the bus. Yeah. But this was kind of egregious. There's two C Millers. There's one that's actually a good knife maker, and there's another one on there that, ooh boy, I've never seen somebody digress as a maker on YouTube. Because his first video, absolutely amazing. He made this really beautiful Kiradashi, really nice high finish on the flat of the blade with like a satin on the main bevel. It looked beautiful. It was just beautiful, simple, clean. And then I went back like a year ago or whatever, and he made like a cavalry saber out of a piece of crowbar, and it just kind of hurt because I knew that at one point he was making some really top notch, just really clean stuff, and then just kind of fell off.
Lost the
I kind of lost it. Yeah, I kind of went to the Pakistani school of design for knives, and I don't say that against Pakistanis. You guys are great people. However, I'm just saying as a
I was going to say you might want to explain the Pakistani.
Yeah. So
Damascus.
Here, let's get into that cesspool of mediocrity. So, Damascus. So everybody and their mother that's a middle of the road knife fan always has something made out of Damascus, and they'll always come up and show me, and it's always these $35 knife from and like I said, yeah, I love you, Pakistan, but this just happens to be where it usually comes from, but it's it's just very mediocre at best knives that it's there, the steel's not there. The finish isn't there, and that's how they're able to produce them at $35 a pop, and good for them if you can do that. But the main problem I have with them is, at least with the online sector of their sales, they'll usually steal from a few very prominent makers, and that's where it's kind of like, come on, But like I said, it's
more scammy than just selling a cheap knife. Kind of.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I respect the grind for anybody. Everybody's got to eat. Everybody's got to have a place to live. I respect it. However, I don't respect you stealing other people's work and saying, "Hey, this is for sale. Give me money, and I'll take it." And you'll get this in the mail.
Yeah, you'll get something that looks kind of like this in the mail. Yeah. But yeah, then that is like. That's the gift and the burden of the internet is like, we have all this information.
Yep.
But we also have all this information.
Yeah, it's like I said, the hardest part nowadays about trying to learn anything new is not finding information. Information is incredibly easy to find. It's finding the good information, because everybody has their 2 cents. Everybody has an opinion, but whether or not it's a good opinion, that's the real question.
Yeah. That is the thing. I'll see in YouTube comments all the time. Repeated somebody correcting somebody with the wrong information on something.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's a whole there's a whole sector of that. That's a whole lot of fun. Oh boy, if you want this podcast to go for about an hour longer, we can start talking about Damascus and all that entails.
Hey, it's long form. Go into it, man.
Yeah. So okay, so let's get into Damascus. So it sounds like you kind of know a little bit about at least Damascus as far as like looks and stuff. You've heard of it or seen it and stuff like that? Yeah. So for the uninitiated, Damascus, as far as we know it, and I'm gonna stop all you because I can hear the of the keyboards. I can hear it already. Okay. So historical Damascus came from like a singular mine in India, and we might have lost that mine. That mine might be completely dried up. Or it might have been through a completely different process, and they just don't make it anymore because the recipe was lost. But historical Damascus is different than modern day Damascus. Now, to get on a very quick side note of that, It is possible that it got lost in translation, and Damascus, as far as we know it in the historical context, is actually what we now currently know as Woots, which is a crucible steel, which is a combination of iron and cast iron and a crucible, and you melt it down and it makes all this really nice, good stuff. But as far as the modern definition goes, it is pattern welded. It is a pattern welded steel. It is taking two different steels, and that can differ based on what you're after. So there's carbon Damascus, there's stainless Damascus, there's even titanium Damascus, which is some really pretty stuff if you ever get to look at that. But a lot of people on the internet really, really, really like to say, "Oh man, that's not real Damascus. The real Damascus could cut through a stone and still be sharp enough to shave silk," and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, maybe, but if you lose riddle me this: if McDonald's lost the recipe for the Big Mac or whatever, and they made another one, does that mean they can't call it a Big Mac again? Okay, if it's and then so it's understood that this pattern welded steel is called Damascus. So,
but it's also not from 2,000 years.
Yeah, it's the industry standard for the material has changed. Okay, stop being such a linguist purist.
Yeah.
That, oh man, it's just pattern welded. No, it's just call it Damascus. Everybody knows what Damascus is. You're going to confuse people by saying pattern welded because there's different types of pattern welded steel. You could probably make an argument for like Gomai and Sanmai and all that stuff is pattern welded steel, but that's completely different than aesthetically than Damascus. But I digress. But yeah, so that's the end of that tangent on for that. But no, like I said, it's just one of those things where, just call it Damascus, please.
Yeah, the language has changed.
Yeah, the language has changed. We understand it as something
now.
different.
Yeah.
Cool your jets.
Yeah. So for all the people who are completely bemused by our use of technical terms in this, but they want to learn more. How can they find you, reach out to you for more, or for if they want to do a class or just want more information? Or
Yeah, so Burges Forge for everything. Burges _ Forge, BURGESS Forge. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and you can also find my website, burgesforge.com. I make custom knives. I sell, I sell kind of batch knives. I sell knives from classes. I try and sell, and I've even, So let me get on another tangent about my personal life. So I went to school for 4 years to be for jewelry. And so I'm actually also doing jewelry as well because my intention was to always incorporate that into knife making because that's that higher being able to set gemstones and all that stuff into is kind of the higher echelon of knife making, and so that was one of my theories on that.
Yeah.
But Burgess.
Why do you say theory? I guess
theories because it hasn't really been applied yet.
It hasn't taken fruition.
Yeah, I've yet to reach that tier where I'm putting diamonds and all that stuff into a gold inlay on a handle or whatever. But one day.
Well, I mean, this is long form, so. I guess how did you get into the jewelry? Was this like something you've always been interested, or was
it was kind of a X leads to Y kind of thing, because I was a bladesmith. Sorry, almost said blacksmith. I'm very not a blacksmith. I'd like to establish
the
that.
Keyboards are typing.
Yeah. Because if anybody's ever seen my blacksmith work, ooh boy, it's very, very rough. But no. But it's one of those things where before I went to college and all that, I was looking at all these really high tier, knife makers that were doing all these really incredible things, and so I kind of learned that dealing with silver, gold, and all that, is kind of needed to some degree later on in my career, and so it's like, you know what? At the very least, if this doesn't work out for whatever reason, jewelry, I can go anywhere,
Yeah.
I could be my own boss if I wanted to, or I could work in a and actually be a jeweler, under whatever company or whatever.
Yeah.
and still have a creative outlet. That's the main thing for me, is that I can't do medial back and forth of, type out the sheet, send it to the boss. I want to be able to hold something that I've made.
You have to fulfill that creative need.
Yeah. It's for everything that you make, it doubles your lifespan, because the person that gets it, they're going to pass it on to their kids, and it'll probably last till their kids, and so my lifespan gets infinitely longer the more knives I make.
Yeah. Well, this has been super interesting. I hope everybody stuck through all our technical side and everything.
Yeah.
I know I had fun with it.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me out here. And,
it was my pleasure.
Awesome shop, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
No, my pleasure.
Hi, I hope you enjoyed listening to the interview, and if you did, go ahead and just like and follow or whatever it is on the platform you're listening to. That just helps me reach more people. Thanks. I saw you just do that. You're pretty neat.